Well, here we are again. Long time no see, guys. So it most certainly has been a while since the last upload from this Do Not Search series. First and foremost, thank you so much for your patience on this one. I cannot put into words the relief I feel in finally getting this video completed and on my channel. Without drawing this intro out too long, the delay on this one was a combination of health issues I had struggled with recently, as well as the monumental challenge of ensuring the content is censored and presented appropriately for YouTube. If you've been around on my channel since part 3's initial upload, you may recall the modifications I had to make to it since YouTube took down the first upload. And because of this, I've decided on somewhat of a solution moving forward. Basically, TLDR, I'm going to have a more or less censored version on my Patreon that will be available, meant to supplement this video, which will still cover all topics and talk about all the awful things we're about to talk about. Just the Patreon one is going to be in more detail. So if you guys do want that, and do want to, get in on that action, more details will be at the end of the video in my outro. But if you just want to hear about these terms in a safe space that's not as mind-scarring, and if you're apprehensive to actually look up these search terms and, just hear about them, then the YouTube version will do just fine. Am I rambling? I think I'm rambling. Anyways, without any further delays, I finally bring you all level 4 of Nihon no kensaku shite wa ikenai kotoba. The Monster with 21 Faces. Known in Japanese as Kaijin Nijuichi Menso and also as the Glico Morinaga case, this is among the most infamous events in Japan for its mystery, tragedy, and inability to be resolved. The Monster with 21 Faces is in reference to the unidentified group of people who engaged in mass poisoning, kidnapping, and extortion over a 17-month period during the 1980s. It's unknown if this group did actually consist of that many people. The namesake is actually derived from an Edogawa Rampo novel titled The Fiend with 21 Faces. The amount of people actually involved in this group could be less or more than 21. We really don't know much of anything about them. What is known is that they heavily targeted Japanese snack companies such as Glico and Morinaga in a number of ways and openly heckled law enforcement in the process. The first of many events occurred in March of 1984. This is when 42-year-old Katsuhisa Ezaki, the new CEO of Glico, was at home taking an evening bath. At approximately 9 p.m., 2 men broke into Ezaki's mother's home, located at the rear of Ezaki's own house on the same property. They demanded entrance to Ezaki's residence and stole a key to make their way inside. They then continued into Ezaki's home further, terrifying Ezaki's wife and one of his young children. The 2 men did not bother with the wife or child, however, they merely continued on to find Ezaki himself. Meanwhile, Ezaki did hear the disruptance downstairs and brought his other 2 children in the bathroom with him to hide. The men would eventually barge into the bathroom, taking Ezaki himself from the home, straight from his home while he was still not clothed. The very next morning, a ransom request was found by a Glico company director within a phone booth. It demanded 220 pounds of solid gold as well as a staggering 1 billion yen. Law enforcement and Ezaki's family scrambled in an attempt to address these demands, though would not need to engage with the assailants further. 3 days after the abduction, Ezaki himself successfully escaped from his captors all on his own. Following his safe return, Ezaki took to speaking to the public and police regarding this ordeal. This is where he was able to reveal that he was being held at a warehouse in Ibaraki City, which is very close to the Glico headquarters. This placement would be important to consider later. This event is not something that was ever seen at this caliber in Japan, or at least not very often at all. The kidnapping of a company CEO sounded like something out of an action movie or drama, not something observed in real life. For this reason, the public was both drawn to and terrified by this incident. Little did those at the time know, this was only the beginning. Glico would be targeted once again only 1 month following the kidnapping in April of 1984. This is when numerous cars were set on fire outside the company headquarters. This was shortly followed by the discovery of hydrochloric acid, a highly corrosive and toxic chemical within one of Glico's factories. In May of 1984, the first of a series of letters were sent to Glico, law enforcement, and local news outlets. This letter claimed to have boxes of Glico's popular snack, Puke, laced with cyanide, and that they planned to plant these boxes on store shelves. This letter was signed by, quote-unquote, the monster with 21 faces, making it a title created by the group themselves. This cyanide-laced Puke thread is thought to have been acted on. This is seen on this found footage of a man in a baseball cap placing a box of Puke on store shelves. Despite this, no deaths or hospitalizations are correlated with the event. The threat did result in great cautionary measures being taken to prevent any disaster, as Glico removed its products from stores and suffered a great loss of profit. This inevitably resulted in the company having to lay off 450 employees. The letters continued. Two key similarities in them are the Osakan slang and phrasing used, as well as their deliberately shaming and taunting of the police. Two in April read like this: Dear dumb police officers, don't tell a lie. All crimes begin with a lie, as we say in Japan. Don't you know that? Two police fools. You shouldn't lie. If you lie, you steal. I also sent this to the Koshien police. Why are you lying? Don't hide things. Why are you complaining? You guys are having such a hard time, so I will give you a hint. I enter the factory from the side staff entrance. The typewriter we used is pawn writer. The plastic container used was a piece of street garbage. Monster with 21 faces. In June of 1984, the letters that Glico had stopped, and the monster concluded that they forgave Glico in one final letter. In November of 1984, the monster with 21 faces would once again become active, this time targeting another Japanese snack company, Morinaga. On November 1st, Morinaga Vice President Mitsuo Yamada received a letter at his home address. This letter included yet another demand for money. This time, though, they threatened to blackmail the victim in order to receive what they wanted. They requested a slightly smaller but still obscene amount of 200 million yen. The blackmail threat in the letter was vague, only claiming to destroy the company. While all this was occurring, police agonized over trying to locate this criminal group. They never did identify any members of the group, however, though did come across one significant lead. This was when an investigator identified a man with a strong build and fox-like eyes when claiming to be a company employee with ransom money. This same man was spotted again when the monster began blackmailing House Foods, another Japanese snack company, in November of 1984. This time at a rest stop when law enforcement set up another meeting to deliver ransom money. With this person being spotted yet again, a composite sketch of the fox-eyed man was released to the public in January of 1985. Despite exhausting their efforts and resources, law enforcement was unable to make any arrests. In August of 1985, the stress and ridicule of the entire ordeal finally became too much to bear for Superintendent Yamato of the Shiga Prefecture Police Department. On August 7th of that year, Superintendent Yamato ended everything via self-immolation in his own office. It was following this event that the monster with 21 faces sent their final letter, sending their quote-unquote condolences regarding Yamato's death and saying they were finished with harassing snack companies as they had other things to do. And following this letter, the actions of the monster with 21 faces ceased completely. They were never heard from again, and it's unknown if the members moved on to commit different crimes or affiliate with different syndicates. After all, nobody was ever identified. Some believe this whole situation was intended to simply criticize and showcase the incompetence of Japanese police. With the letters, even though sent to news outlets directly criticizing the police specifically, I can see why this theory is plausible, especially since the activity was decidedly ceased following the superintendent's death. The Nagaoka Bracken murder case. This is the still unsolved murder of two women in the spring of 1979. To this day, the mystery of who did this to these women and why it was done remains a mystery. Japan's statute of limitations on this case were reached in 1994. Because of that, justice for these victims and their families will likely never be seen. Bracken is a type of fern. They're native to Japan, especially Nagaoka, as well as many other places throughout the world. And while that might be interesting, you may be wondering, why am I saying this? Well, the namesake of this case comes from the two victims' intention of going hiking in the mountains to forage bracken leaves. These victims are referred to as 32-year-old Keiko and her friend, 43-year-old Eko. They worked at the same supermarket located in Nagaoka, Kyo City, and decided to spend their midday picnicking and foraging bracken in the mountains. They finished their early shift at that said supermarket and were witnessed leaving together by employees at around 11 a.m. Following the sighting, the two women were never seen alive again. At 3:30 p.m. on that same day, 32-year-old Keiko was supposed to pick up her son from kindergarten. She never showed up, and this urged her husband to become concerned. Eko and Keiko's husbands were both told where their wives would be and decided to search the mountains together that evening. They were unable to find anything and ended up filing a police report on the afternoon of the next day. A search party was formed and the police were able to find the bikes the victims took into the mountains with them, but nothing else. It wasn't until the very next day, 2 days after the disappearance of the women, that both bodies were found. Following this, the circumstances of the women's deaths became further convoluted. Both women were clearly murdered, Keiko from strangulation, Eko from many stab wounds. The attacker was believed to be one man with no accomplices. This is due to the nature of the injuries on the bodies. It was also theorized that the killer had a large, strong build that easily overpowered the two women. This is again strongly suggested after examining the bodies. The blood of the murderer was found and it was concluded that his blood type was O. Beyond that, nothing else narrowing down who did this was found. The crime scene provided many confusing details regarding the motive of the assailant. The first one was that he did not steal anything from the women's bags. The picnic bag was found nearby with everything still inside, including full wallets, their bento boxes, and the bracken they had picked. What's even more confusing is the note left in Eko's pocket. It read, "Owarete iru, tasugete kudasai. Kono otoko no hito, warui hito." What does this translate to? We are being followed. Help us. This man is a bad person. The note was written on a receipt from the supermarket the victims worked at. The case went cold following this and no suspects were found. However, 1 year prior to the incident, a woman was approached by a man with a knife in the same area as the murder. This woman was accompanied by her family and was able to escape. 5 years later, in that very same area of the Nagaoka Mountains, yet another woman was found dead. Blood from the killer was also found on her, the very same type of blood from the murder 5 years prior. But see, here's where it gets weird. This woman, murdered 5 years after Eko and Keiko, worked at that very same supermarket. What's even more bizarre is that she had accompanied the two women on their picnic the day they were killed, only spared 5 years prior due to leaving the picnic early. She evaded death only to ultimately still become a victim years later, likely by the same man. As I mentioned previously, the statute of limitations has long passed and this case will likely go unsolved. This is very unfortunate and a bit disturbing that this case reached its deadline only after 15 years. This man could still be out there. Today's technology could possibly help solve the case, though it unfortunately went cold and unsolved. Tokyo Puke. The All Japan Vomit Association is something that exists. Not only that, but this association appoints chairmen and vomit critics. Someone by the name of Mr. Fujimori was appointed to both these titles. And what does he do with such credibility? He launched the webpage Tokyo Puke. And what did such a webpage provide, you may ask? Images of vomit discovered throughout all 23 wards of Tokyo. And how, you may ask, were these wild vomit sightings discovered and recorded? Well, it stated that a lot of them were the result of drunken businessmen having a little too much fun at the nearby bars. Fujimori updated the site frequently up until the year 2011, and it suddenly ceased activity. Image board. This term, this one right here, is one you may be familiar with if you watch certain genres of anime and film. If you are familiar, it's pretty self-explanatory. If not, then look at the screen. Fun fact, this act was thought to be punishment to women who were caught cheating on their spouses in ancient Japan. That's actually incorrect. The real punishment for female adulterers? Beheading. Again, this one is pretty self-explanatory with what I've already established. It's an image board that shows these types of meetups, gatherings, engagements, however these organized things are made possible, and the aftermath of it all. The specific image board likely being referred to here is simply titled Bon or board, and both live action and animated uploads are welcome on this site. There's also photos that make use of anime figures rather than real people as the receiver. Yukio Mishima, Friday. We briefly discussed Friday magazine in our last level, specifically relating to their 1999 issue that released photos of the late singer Yutaka Ozaki. While Friday, to my knowledge, is mainly a tabloid magazine, it does feature these rather unpleasant stories from time to time, and the Yutaka Ozaki issue was not the first instance. Rather, the coverage of the sudden and shocking death of writer Yukio Mishima was. The people of Japan in 1970 were already very familiar with Mishima prior to this event. He's considered to be among the great post-war novelists of Japan, regarded almost as highly as the late Osamu Dazai, who is best known for his novel No Longer Human. Depending on who you ask, Mishima may be regarded higher than Dazai. They were both very talented writers. Another similarity between these two writers are the demons and struggles they had faced during the time they were living. Among Mishima's personal struggles was his vocal disdain for Japan's current political structure. Without getting too into it, Mishima was very much supportive of the ideas of the Japan of old. He basically felt that Japan was losing its traditional ideals in lieu of the urge to submit to the globalization of materialistic Western ideas and culture. There is more to it, though I'm not particularly fluent in Japanese political topics, so I don't want to touch on it too much since, I'm not an expert by any means. Though if you are interested in the life and literary works of Yukio Mishima, there have been films and documentaries made about him. I personally recommend this one. Anyways, these political views were not common knowledge to the public early in Mishima's career, though he became more vocal about it as time went on. Mishima had also engaged in some acting as well as modeling. One piece of Mishima's acted out the process of. Long story short, and yes, this story is quite long, Yukio Mishima had very extreme ideals and fascinations. With the clear escalation of Mishima's fixations, everything built up to a final startling crescendo on the 25th of November 1970. This was the day that Mishima, along with trusted friends and devoted followers, attempted to overthrow a Japanese military base in a sudden coup that aimed to illegally gain control of it and re-implement nationalist Japanese ideals. This attempt was a complete and utter failure. A now well-known image from this attempt shows Mishima trying to give a speech. His audience, those stationed at the base, simply laughed and heckled him as he tried to continue. With Mishima's goal acknowledged as a futile effort, Mishima had prepared a plan B in the case it didn't work out. This plan B involved the ritual act of ending one's own life and admitting defeat. This time, however, it was not an act. Mishima had full intention to see it through, and he succeeded. This is where the issue of Friday comes in. It features various uncensored images of Mishima as well as his accomplices. The photos of the scene and what took place are brutal and raw. While being released in black and white, the aftermath of this infamous event is very much visible. This in itself makes the search term what it is categorized as, though the story surrounding how everything took place is also twisted and obscene in itself. Yukio Mishima's literary works are excellent, and that's still abundantly clear today, as his books and short stories have been translated into various languages and many are classic staples within their home country. His writing style is distinct and elegant. At the time of the attempted coup, some who agreed with his traditional mindset saw Mishima's act as gallant and honorable. Though the Japan of 1970 was changing and the traditional ideals that Mishima strived for were simply remnants of the past as Japan would continue to ease towards westernization and materialistic mindsets, specifically and especially during the bubble economy of the 1980s. Mortal Kombat. So, yeah, you heard that correctly. In Tier 4 of Japan's most forbidden and unpleasant search terms is the game Mortal Kombat. If you're in any way familiar with this video game series, you would likely have an idea as to why people feel the need to warn others to just not search it, because it's pretty violent. Though I'm not exactly sure why it's, hanging out here on the 4th tier of 7 of things you should never search, considering the other things in this layer. But it breaks up the iceberg a little bit, has a little less tragedy, a little more stuff like this. But to give a brief summary, Mortal Kombat is a game that first made its way to the public via American developer Midway in 1992. It's a classic fighting game very similar in gameplay to Street Fighter, though it's known for its intense and hyper-realistic visuals depicting extreme gore and violence. This game is literally the reason the ESRB exists today. Well, not exactly. Technically, it was the Sega CD title, Night Trap, in 1992. But Mortal Kombat definitely aided in the conception, as its subject matter sparked lawsuits and heated debate over video games' violence and their potential influence on kids. Such debate remains to this day. Some of the gore scenes haven't aged too well, but if you get into the more recent releases, then yeah, they're pretty grotesque. The Petit Angel Incident. This is an infamous case in Japan for a number of reasons. Among the most awful details is the exploitation and abuse of young girls. This incident begins with 3 girls in the 6th grade who recently left home. For a bit of context here, Japanese kids become self-sufficient at a very young age. Children as young as 5 years old are often seen out on their own taking the train to school or buying groceries for their parents. Once children reach their early teens, their independence is seen further as some young people choose to simply work and make a living once they finish middle school. High school is not a requirement in Japan, and while continuing your education is the typical route for many there, some begin working and living on their own much sooner. This was the case for these 3 girls. They were together in Shibuya after leaving home in July of 2003. It was here, near the famous Moai statue outside Shibuya Station, where Kotaro Yoshizato comes in, a man notorious for creating the Petit Angel Club, as well as producing illegal media involving the girls of the club. This includes videos that he sold. These activities made him a lot of money, and Yoshizato became very wealthy. This also caused a lot of attention to be on him. He had evaded prosecution for his business multiple times by 2003. So Yoshizato approached these girls in Shibuya, asking if they could simply clean up his apartment for 10,000 yen, which is roughly a little over $100. Not very much money, but to these young girls, probably a lot of money. So, because these girls were still quite young, needed the money, and likely didn't realize the possible dangers of such a situation, they agreed. This was when they were then accompanied by another man as they went to Yoshizato's apartment. Once there, the girls were threatened with a taser and held against their will inside the apartment. This is when the events took a very confusing turn. 3 days after the girls were abducted, they began to smell gas from an outside room and also noticed that it suddenly became very quiet. One of the girls saw the potential dangers of these noted details and began struggling to escape. She was inevitably able to, though the other 2 girls were not. The girl able to escape made it to a shop where the police were called, and the other 2 girls were rescued in time. When the residence was searched, Yoshizato's body was found in a self-made tent. He had passed away from self-inflicted carbon monoxide inhalation. The mystery as to why Yoshizato suddenly did this remains unanswered to this day. Following this incident, it was discovered that his family had a history of these actions, though this was only a fraction of what else surfaced. The primary topics later discussed by the media at the time were the details of the Petit Angel Club. This includes the obscene prices of the quote-unquote dates with the girls, as well as a guest list with over 2,000 names. Many speculate who was on this list, though the true identities have never been released to the public. The identities of the three girls remained anonymous due to the Japanese laws restricting the release of information of minors. The photos of these victims were supposedly leaked on 2chan momentarily before being removed. It's an odd case, one that likely has a lot more depth to it than what's initially perceived. I'm going to provide a link detailing this one a little further in the description. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this whole thing. Kaori Manabe address. This one can, without a doubt, harm your computer. Do not search this one, guys. I'm serious. Kaori Manabe is a Japanese actress born in 1980. She's known for a few significant acting roles as well as her work modeling. Aside from her namesake, this one really doesn't have much to do with her at all. It simply uses Manabe's namesake to bring people to the site. The site, officially titled, oh lord, that's long, Shinkiten Yari Naoshi, Ura Internet Manyu Aru to Manabe Kaori no Kojin Joho o Kohyo Suru Saito, is known for showing a jump scare of a woman bleeding from her mouth before bombing the user's computer with many, many viruses. Again, you have been warned. The official name for this type of forbidden search term is burakura, and it's a somewhat popular way to troll people, at least in the past it was, and it's trolling them in the worst way possible. Nowadays, the original site is down, however. I really don't recommend looking into this though, for the mental health of your computer specifically. Again, you have been warned. Many, many viruses are attributed to this one. Uncle Soup. This one is a very unpleasant image that comes up when searching this specific term in Japanese, that is. Like, seriously, it's pretty disgusting, and this is one I really think you should not search, no matter how curious you may get. I saw it and it's really bad. I wish I didn't. It's called Uncle Soup because it's an image of a man in a tub, and he's been in that tub for quite some time. I was unable to find any details about the origin of this photo or who the person in the bathtub was. The only source I can trace is rotten.com, which, you know, makes sense. It's a well-known site for these types of gore shock images. So, yeah, that's it. Contest at 6. There's not a whole lot to this one, just the gross visuals. Cockroaches, right? They're gross, and they audibly crunch when stepped on. Yet, despite that, they can apparently survive a nuclear bomb. What the hell? Why? Anyways, as the name suggests, there's a contest at 6. And what does it entail? Eating cockroaches. Because why the heck not, I guess? The video in question is very shocking and unpleasant. That's likely why it's here. This is yet another one that I don't understand being on the 4th tier. We've talked about a Japanese TV personality eating bugs in the last part, so this type of subject matter must make some people pretty uncomfortable. That's why a lot of bug eating is on this wiki. I can only assume that a large chunk of the Japanese populace has a phobia of ingesting bugs or watching someone do it. Film core. This is in reference to a very underground Japanese Guro film distributor. The widespread discovery of film core, also referred to as dream film core, came about during the doomed search for Saki Sanobashi, aka Go for a Punch, the mythical lost deep web anime that likely does not exist. When the search for Saki was in full swing, somebody had discovered a live-action eroguro film titled Lady in the Sea of Blood, and people took notice for its similarities to Saki. Following this discovery, some began looking into the films produced by Filmcore further. It's revealed that Lady in the Sea of Blood actually has sequels, and that Filmcore created films that were even more disturbing. Filmcore as a studio no longer exists, and the films they produced were so shocking and unsettling that they weren't exactly sold in the typical video stores of the time. They were very much underground, and their films were released in small quantities. This makes a good portion of them lost or not confirmed to exist. Perhaps that's a good thing. Still, these videos do pop up online from time to time and end up being found, and when they do, man are they unpleasant to look at. Brazilian Human 1994. This is yet another shock image, so fair warning. It's of a man found in Brazil in 1989, not 1994, despite the title. The state of the body is bizarre, and how it ended up that way is mysterious and unexplained. Some theorize that the man was mutilated by alien life forms, as nobody can explain why the body pictured appears the way it does. If you want more details on this, check out the Patreon version, because I can't really say a whole lot about this without getting a little too graphic. BME Zine. You may be familiar with the BME Pain Olympics. It was a series of shock body modification videos presented by BME Zine. This is a topic known by internet users in the Western world especially, as the subject matter of them are notorious by early internet users. Short for body modification e-zine, the particular focus of this publication was extreme body modification, stuff like snake tongues and scarification, horns under the skin, stuff like that. There was also more sensitive and private regions of the body being modified that they showcased, if you catch my drift. The site was founded in 1994, and there have been multiple attempts to have the site taken down, particularly by the German government. Some of the content of this magazine is so extreme that it features the full amputation of certain regions. Again, wink, wink. The common theme of the content within this magazine is how the modifications significantly disfigure and reshape parts in ways that are pretty much irreversible. The contents of this magazine are so incredibly shocking, even if you go into this one prepared, that it still has the potential to make you a little uncomfortable or sick, so fair warning. TheMacUser.org. This webpage no longer exists, though much like old sites such as Meatspin and Goatsy, don't look those up either, this one thrived on shocking those with the image that came up once the site loaded. The image, with a title likely meant to take a jab at people who prefer Mac over Windows, showcases a lad covered in his own waste, sitting at a desk with an iMac. Oh, also he's eating it. The earliest mention of this image on Urban Dictionary was 2011, though the site likely predated that a little bit. The origin of the image, likely some amateur adult video, though its origins don't seem to be documented well online. The site is now owned by somebody else, and most of what comes up are sites telling you if the webpage is a scam or not. Yes, it will scam you. And thus concludes part 4 of my Do Not Search Iceberg series, or Kensaku shite wa ikenai kotoba. Yay. Question mark. And like I said, I'm going to take a little bit of time here to kind of explain the alternate version I'll have up on my Patreon. Again, it's not going to be something required to understand the video. All the same topics will be discussed, just at greater length, so I can, get into the meats and the potatoes a little more without being worried about the video being, age restricted and not appropriate for YouTube and their terms of service and whatnot. So basically, this director's cut of these videos and the future tiers going forward will be up on my Patreon. All you gotta do is subscribe. Any of the tiers will gain you access to it. There's just whatever one you want to pledge to will get you access to the uncut version of the video. Again, I do want to be clear in saying this is not a different video. You will not be missing anything if you go for the Patreon version and check it out. Or don't, is what I meant to say if you don't go for the Patreon version. All this is a version with more details and visuals I can't provide on YouTube. The uncut version took me a little more time and energy to put out, and it's really just a bonus perk for those who want it, that's all. Anyways, that is really it. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know which mystery or topic or whatever you enjoyed most in this one. I really enjoyed researching for the monster with 21 faces, a lot, as well as some of the other more mystery involved ones. A lot of stuff I haven't really heard of in like English videos or English articles. Anyways, I'm out for now. More videos to come. I got a big spooky video coming up for Halloween, so look forward to that. I'm also making shorts now. I noticed those don't come up in my subscriptions. So if you like shorts, I do Japanese lost media shorts now, so check those out if you would like. But yeah, I am rambling again, so I am out, guys. See you guys in the next video. Bye. This video would not be complete without a shout out to my Patreons. This includes Daniel Barrientos, Pan-Fried Life Jacket Awareness, Nicholas Allen, Sidagio VGM, Solar9, Enegdra J. Reese, Donut Brewitt, Leon X8, Christopher Valencia, Hilary, Erica, Justin Fuda, PPASSC Cat Tag, again, I'm sorry for butchering that, Quetzalcoat IFC, Andrew LaPena, VHS Fitch, Doyle Evans, Airfire, Mary Y, Grand Tactician, Andre K, Good with a Stain, Kevin and Soko, Elizabeth Paulino, Jordy Kirk, Bishonen Knife, and Lester Young. I am sorry if I sound raspy, I have a cold.